Good morning. We'll do it again. Good morning. My name is Jordan Wilson. I'm the Senior Vice President of Scorpion on the franchise side. So we're just excited to have you here. We're excited to hug necks. Raise your hand if you're excited to see people in person. Hug some necks. Amen to that. We're excited to have you. So today we're going to go through, am I loud? Is it too loud? I'm echoing. Okay. We're going to go through three things. We're going to do lessons learned. We want today to be as beneficial to you as possible. And so what we're going to walk through is the marketing side, digital marketing side of your business, the operations side of your business, and the franchise development side of your business. And things that we wish people would have told us early on, mistakes that we made, maybe some oopsies that happened early on in our career. And then we're also going to talk about successes that have happened, things that we want to implore you with, and tell you what we're putting in place in our businesses that are working, and so that you can get a head start in that. That's the agenda today. We're going to walk through that, and then we're going to leave a lot of time for Q&A. The good thing is we only have 10 minutes to do this session, so strap in. We're going to do a lot of clapping and some pictures. Good clapping, thanks in the back, my man. I'll let our esteemed panel introduce themselves, and then we'll get started. Go ahead, Marci.
All right. Hi, everyone. Marci Kleinsasser. I'm the Vice President of Marketing with Handyman Connection. We have almost 65 locations now in North America, and our franchisees do small to medium home improvement. So we are one call, one connection for all of your home improvement. And great to be with you today.
My name is Ryan Comby. I am the managing partner at Better Way Franchise Group. I've started 6 different franchise concepts and been a part of about 20 more. So currently have a brand called Safe from Spread, which we started during the pandemic, and happy to be here. I'm filling in for Marcos, so if you're all looking at your agenda, you're like, well, where's Marcos? I'm half the price, so it's last minute. They brought me in, so.
Hi, everyone. Susan Boresow. I'm the president and CEO of Massage Heights. I've been with this brand for about 4 months now. I've been in franchising 35 years. We have 121 retreats, U.S., and I'm loving every day. So it's about massages and facials and feeling really good about yourself today. So happy to be here.
Love it. Thank you, guys. We'll start off on oopsies or mistakes made early on in our career. When we were talking as a group, we want to make sure that this was really interactive for you guys, especially for emerging brands. We all talked about in our careers that there were things that we did and implemented, and then 2 years later we were like, where were you on that one? Why didn't somebody tell me that I shouldn't go that direction? Can I come to all these conferences? So we want to make this very interactive with you guys, make sure we give you a lot of meat to take home with you. So we'll start with Marci on the marketing side, mistakes that were made early on in career or maybe with the brand that you guys learned from.
So we've heard a lot of these themes even from some of our speakers already today. So for me, a couple lessons learned in digital marketing and marketing overall. For your franchisees, you need to keep it simple. KISS method. Very intuitive, but I know for me and several franchise brands that I've worked with, I've joined the marketing team to lead a team of franchise marketers, and they were all over the place with their marketing programs, trying to support franchisees that, again, you've heard it today, franchisees don't come into your brand as franchise marketing experts. They look to you as the franchisor to provide you with, or to provide them rather, with franchise programs, franchise marketing programs that are simple. So that's the first lesson learned. We had to consolidate a lot in several brands that I've worked with to keep it very simple for them. So whether you're doing it in-house or you're relying on franchise expert partners, keep it simple. Another lesson learned for me in the brand that I work with at Handyman Connection is you want to define clear roles and goals. What is the expectation for the franchisee in terms of their responsibility for digital marketing? What are you doing as a franchisor? If you're an emerging brand, what are you going to provide in terms of digital marketing support? And what do you want your partners that you're going to bring into your system as an extension of your team to provide support in the digital marketing space for them? So make that very clear. When I first joined Handyman Connection, we had a variety of digital marketing partners, and the franchisees were telling me that's how we want it. And we did an audit of that that ecosystem, if you will, and it just didn't work for the franchisees. It didn't make sense from an ROI perspective, and we made a quick change in that regard. So clear roles and goals on who is responsible for what. So those were some lessons learned in the digital marketing space for us.
Ryan, on the Fran Dev side, I know marketing, I know you're really a genius in the space. Can you give things that you guys did maybe early on at any of the companies that you had that you thought, man, I wish that we would have done something a little bit different. Now that I know what I know now, here's what we would have done.
Yeah, I mean, look, you definitely have more failures than successes. You just hope the successes outweigh them. I think as far as like lessons on the Fran Dev, the biggest lesson I would have, and it actually carries through your whole brand, is I am somebody who, like, if you tell me you need to slow down, that's basically you're just trying to give me an anxiety attack, right? Because it's go as hard as I can. But the biggest lesson I would say I've learned in Fran Dev is you really need to know exactly who you want to sell a franchise to. Because when your brand gets to 20 units, 30 units, 50 units, and you're dealing with 4 different personality types from 100 different backgrounds, that becomes a system that is extremely difficult to evolve and to train and to do different things. And so really define, I'm looking to sell to this person, because that way any transition and as you progress throughout your brand, it makes it that much easier because you're dealing with a more limited spectrum of personality types and backgrounds and things like that.
Correct. I'll even echo that. I think it's way easier emerging brand. How many emerging brands do we have here, concepts? I think it's really easy. It's a lot easier to loosen the rope than to rein the rope back in, right? So keep that rope, keep everything at your core tight early on. It's so easy, and I know there's so many founders and CEOs here that will probably, hopefully will echo this. It's so easy, or you're teased into extending that rope early on to certain Zs that are coming on board. Keep that rope super tight to you, because I think just like Ryan said, there's complicates, gives you headaches later on as you continue to grow.
Right.
All right, Susan, operations side, mistakes. You're tenured here. You know all of the good things. Tell us about, just on the ops, maybe some mistakes early on.
Yeah, I guess just from a learning perspective, I'm going to frame it in the word and vernacular recap. So I'll start with R. Just keeping everything relevant and in real time. So I know that's marketing and ops, but just making sure that whatever your content is, that it is relevant to your consumer today. The E is making sure you educate yourself. Gosh, sometimes I wish I would have gone back and been a lot smarter in certain areas, but it's, again, that education and embracing, making sure you educate and communicate to your franchisees as well, because they're in a learning process. The C in recap is control and consumer. You heard it earlier, but the more control you have over your FDD and your franchise agreement is really where you need to start. But also there's a balance and a level of flexibility that you have to be mindful of as well. So how you balance that, the control and the flexibility, is really a strategy. It's a lesson learned from myself. And then on the consumer side, I know Ryan touched on it and Marci touched on it a little bit, but from a consumer standpoint, you have to meet your consumer where they're at, but before you do that, you have to know who your consumer is. So really making sure you know who they are and who they aren't, so you can be efficient with your dollars. The A is just being adaptable. You just got to be open-minded. You have to be flexible. If your consumer is on TikTok, then that's where you got to go, whether you like it or not. And then the P in recap is person, making sure that there is a person dedicated to understanding the digital space. It really wasn't me, even way back. Always had to identify smarter people in that space, whether you outsource it or have somebody on your team, just making sure you have the right person there.
That's beautiful. Recap. Can you do the words again on recap?
Recap, relevance, educate, consumer, and control. So there's 2 C's there. A, adopt, and P is people.
That's beautiful.
I want to point out just how perfect this panel is, by the way, because here's the marketing person with ideas scribbled all over their pads. Here's the operations person that literally has perfect notes, all written out where you can remember them, and then I'm the salesperson. I'm just gonna bullshit till you laugh.
Me too.
It's perfect.
I have faces up here that are left as my notes. I don't even know what these are.
You don't like my doodles?
It's
Come on,
perfect.
this
It's
was from
perfect.
this morning. Actually, my notes from my phone, but these are the doodles from today.
That is franchising to a T, just so you know exactly what Ryan just said. Also, to echo what Susan said, brilliant, just a book that I would highly recommend reading. A guy named Donald Miller wrote a book called Building a Story Brand. If you're seeing nodding heads, awesome. He writes some great other books, but on the business side, so good. And he talks about if you confuse, you lose. So take that with every facet of your marketing. Your website, your paid advertising, your creative. If it's not seamless, if it's not easy for the consumer, understanding your consumer, you're gonna lose in your space. So highly recommend that book as well. All right, now let's talk about successes, things that we are rock stars at. Don't be humble. This is not the humble time. You can say all the things that you guys are implementing, things that you're doing really well, marketing, Fran Dev, and ops.
Well, to camp on the theme of making it easy or you're going to lose, our franchisees told us that there was just too much data to consume and we needed to make our systems a lot easier. So I think one of the things we have done well, and one achievement for us, and something I would encourage all of you, especially emerging brands, to look at, is how you're going to bring all the data from your digital marketing efforts to a digestible place for your franchisees. And for us, that was just a way to digest everything in a dashboard, but also a deliberate investment in technology. And as marketers today, we've become kind of MarTech experts. We're not just marketers and we're not technologists per se, and I'm sure all of us have technology partners on our team, whether it's a CIO or even an analyst on your team, but you need to bring all of that together. So for us, we decided that we were going to have one source of truth in our operating system, and that our marketers and our marketing partners were going to come together and bring that data to that one source of truth. So for that is our CRM system for us, and we hold all of our partners accountable to bring that technology into that system, and we've made that data digestible for our franchisees. So if at the end of the day we want growing profitable franchisees, the marketing kind of has to bolt onto that, and we need to prove the ROI for all of the marketing that we do. So that was kind of a light bulb for us in the growth of our system, to say we're going to hold ourselves accountable to bring digestible data to our franchisees. We don't want them to become marketers. We want them to become growing profitable home improvement business owners at Handyman Connection, but we need to make sure that the digital marketing makes sense and that we can prove the investment of every dollar that they spend. So that was kind of the big achievement for us, and that we hold ourselves accountable to that every kind of new program that we add on to our system.
Right.
Yeah, to continue kind of with the marketing and to build on what I said earlier, is figuring out really who you want to sell to. I remember when I took over a brand, it was owned by a large company, and they were just kind of selling franchises all over the place. We had a cost of acquisition that was over $16,000. So if we spent $16,000 in marketing, we'd sign one franchise agreement. And the first project we did was really start to look at, like, who is buying this and who do we want to sell? Because once we know that, we can really start to do some cool marketing directed at those people. So I mean, think about this. Like, if you were selling tickets to an Ohio State game, you would never market people that went to Michigan, right? But we do that in franchising all the time. We think, oh, well, we're just going to blanket this across the board, and then we'll weed them out when they come in. And that doesn't really work. That's why the average length of time from lead to close in the franchise is 6 months. And that, to me, is absurd. Like, that is unbelievably long. Right? It's you got to take the Harry Met Sally approach. This is what I always tell people. If you think it takes somebody 6 months to buy your franchise, then you really don't believe in your franchise, right? Because if you think your franchise is going to change that person's life, you should want that to happen as soon as possible. So that's why I call it the Harry Met Sally. When he goes at the end, he's like, when you realize you want to spend the rest of your life with somebody, you'd like the rest of your life to start as soon as possible. Same thing buying a franchise. So once you figure that out, You bring those person in. You don't have to weed them out through the selling process. You just have to get them into the brand, and it should take about 3 to 4 weeks to do it. And you can really, really target in and really do some marketing. So with that brand that I brought up, we went from a $16,000 cost of acquisition to about a $5,400 cost of acquisition. And we went from selling about 25 franchises a year to like 130 in about 3 years. And then just to also build on that a little bit as we're going to the operations, because there should be kind of that natural dynamic between franchise sales and operations of you're selling to the wrong people. But when you know who you're selling to, you can sell that many franchises because it's that much easier to train, right? Because now you're not dealing with all those personality types and all the background, so your operations team has a significantly easier load when they go to train all those people and keep them in the system.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Sue.
And I'll just piggyback off of what you're saying, Ryan. I think one of the most important decisions anyone makes is who to award a franchise to or who to bring on their team. So something that we've implemented, or I've implemented in my past, that we'll probably look at Massage Heights going forward, is profiling. And, you know, it's an art, and it's not a final decision maker of who you hire. But if you haven't used profiling tools, there's a number of them out there. One is Predictive Indexed. I've used it for many, many years. And what we did is we take the top 25% of our most successful franchisees, and we look at their profile. And we just use it as a guide when we have prospects come in. And it's, again, you ask the right questions. You understand, are they outgoing? Are they introverted? Are they salespeople? Will they adapt and conform to your brand standards? So there's so many different tools to use. You can take it and you obviously can use it to bring on team members. So who's the perfect marketing profile for your company or your team? Who's the perfect salesperson? And you can also filter it down to, in our case, it would be, ideal therapists, estheticians, retreat directors. So again, knowing who your top performers are and profiling them can help you make better decisions of who to bring on your team. And it's an investment you make in your team. So we know what it costs to turn people. We know what, the investment we make within our team, but also with franchisees. So you always want to make sure you do as much as you can to make that selection as targeted and right decisions as possible. So I've used it historically, and it's really, there's many tools out there, but you just got to pick the one that you think is the best. But it's just a good best practice out there at some point in your journey.
Ryan, walk through. We'll do our own case study. An emerging brand that's in this room that has only grown currently organically. They're looking to be more aggressive, don't know where to go. They know there's portals, they know there's brokers, they know there's digital marketing. Advice there. How do I grow? What would I do? I've only grown organically. What would you do?
I mean, if you've grown organically, one, you're on the right track, right? Because you have a product people want, or you have a brand that people want to be a part of. As far as brokers or those, I don't necessarily think there's a right answer. I think some of that depends on how much money you have to spend and the vertical that you're in. Because if you're trying to go out and sell burger franchises, you're going to be competing against some pretty sophisticated competitors that are spending a lot of money. Whereas if you're home services, which the bulk of my career has been in home services, you're targeting a completely different person. But I would say first thing, know who you want to sell to. Second thing, know where you want to go. That's the other big thing too. Don't just start spending money across the United States. And if somebody pops up in Kansas City, we're going to sell to Kansas City. Literally focus in on, we want to be in Franklin County, Ohio. And then our second Ohio State reference. And I'm not even an Ohio State fan, but that's anyway. Or we want to be in Miami-Dade or whatever. And so focus. I always say never market in more than 3 markets. And when I say market, I mean like a city or a county, not a state. Never choose more than 3. And then focus your efforts there. And then to your point, know exactly what's happening with that money. Have a system in place that you can track. If I spent $5,000 here, don't track leads, because leads are what people track when they suck at selling. It really is. Like if you have to go back and say, but look how many leads we got, that's a horrible metric to measure anything on. It's got to be, if I spent $5,000, how many deals am I going to get here? And make sure you're tracking those dollars as they go through. So know who you're selling, know where you're selling, and then what that message is going to be to get that person.
Any advice to a brand on opening it up to the country or regionally? That we've got 5 locations and we're wanting to go expand. Pros and cons to going and opening it up to the country or leaving it close to headquarters and slow that growth.
Again, if it's a service brand, you're going to have an easier time doing that than if it's food, because food you're going to have, or other anything where you may have supply issues of getting something across the country. But I mean, get the checkbook out. It's genuinely going to be significantly more expensive the larger swath you're going to cover when it comes to operations. And I know sometimes when we're selling franchises, we're like, sweet, once they sign the franchise agreement, that's their problem. But it really can become a development problem too, because now you have failing franchisees in the system that make it harder to sell franchises. So yeah, so if you want to open it up, but I hope you have a lot of money, because it gets expensive to do that.
Great point. Marci, early on in your career on the marketing side, maybe tell us about how you guys are structured at Handyman Connection. How do you do it? How do the Z's handle their local marketing? What does the ZOR provide? Do you give preferred vendors to the Z's that they can do everything from a digital? What's that system at Handyman Connection?
Yeah, so we call ourselves, thanks to one of our favorite vendor partners, they've named us the Small and Mighty Team. We're a team of 2. When I started at Handyman Connection, we were a team of 1, and our total team is a team of 10. So I mentioned we're about a 65-unit franchisor. So we rely heavily on our vendor partners, and they are an extension of our team. When I mentioned lesson learned, establishing clear roles and goals, our franchisees are responsible for local marketing, and we do have a national brand fund. And when I first came on, we actually changed that brand fund structure a bit on how it was allocated. But overall, just in summary, franchisees are responsible for local marketing, and that includes anything from Google pay-per-click, social media, et cetera. But we have a very turnkey structure on what they should be doing with that funds using our preferred digital partners. Out of our brand fund, we had made the choice using our marketing committee and our advisory council that the brand fund was going to pay for brand reputation and customer feedback, because that was a critical component for us as a brand. And we were going to support and layer on top of local marketing additional lead gen and additional recruitment marketing. So we also cover that on the brand fund side. So we have supported brand fund with digital marketing partners, and we have a structured program for our franchisees that they fund on the local side.
Perfect. This will be a question for all 3, and then we're going to go to Q&A, and we got 15 to 45 minutes of Q&A. Every system that I've talked to, I've yet to be anybody to tell me I'm wrong. Normally, within every brand, there's 10% of the Z's that believe that they are God's gift to marketing, and then 90% that it's hard to get them to do anything you tell them to do. So how do you guys, maybe on all 3, help educate your Z's, help tell them why it's good and where you're going as a brand, and be a partner to those Z's along their journey? Either one.
You know, I'll kick it off, but I guess just throughout my career, I think one of the best things that you can do is continue to have great relationships, and committees work. You know, you don't have to have huge committees. We have currently at Massage Heights, we have an FAC, which most brands probably have an FAC. We have 3 groups and committees under that. One is a unit economics committee, which really dissects the P&L and the unit economics there. We have a marketing committee, and great committee there. And then we also have what we just formed is a therapist recruitment committee, because obviously hiring therapists is first and foremost right now in our minds and in our franchisees' minds. So again, to me, fostering great relationships, having committees, and continuing to that E word, educate franchisees. You really have to be repetitive, whether it's webinars, whether it's meetings, whether it's town halls, continuing to provide meaningful tools and education processes so they keep up to speed on everything you're doing, not just digital, but just about everything that's going on in their world today. Operations, training, marketing, everything.
So I would say, I mean, there's one thing I always keep in the back of my mind, which was when I started my first concept, I went to the only person I knew that had any experience in franchising, right? Because you don't know anybody that works in franchising when you start out. And he was a franchisee, and he gave me like the best piece of advice anyone has ever given me in franchising. And he said, if you're going to do this, you should know that all the success your franchisees have will be because of them, and all of their failures will be because of you. It's like, so you should know that going in, and that was coming from a franchisee. So now to build on that point too, your franchise system will be like middle school, right? When you go to your annual convention, you're gonna have little cliques that will form up just like it was in middle school, and there's gonna be the people that underperform and complain over here. You're gonna have the overperformers that are there to soak everything in up here, and you're gonna have the troublemakers and all that, back there. And so when you're rolling out any type of marketing strategy, you should have an understanding of the way the politics within your brand work. And it's just a something you're gonna have to deal with. And so you might think that the person in New York that owns 15 units is the person you should go start with, but it's not, because the person in New Mexico with 1 unit might have the loudest voice and be the biggest pain in the butt on the Facebook group. Right? So it's like, hey, I'm going to start this idea with this person. We're going to roll it out. We're going to let them be successful. I'm going to let them take the credit for being successful. And then I've got that voice, right? Now I've got the head cheerleader going through school telling everybody how great of an idea they did, right? Like, oh, well, they had this idea, but we improved on it, and now everybody's going to use it. It's like, sweet, great job, yeah. And so know when you're rolling stuff out that's something you should absolutely have your head wrapped around and how you want to implement that.
I love that when Ryan says that we're all, in middle school and we're at our conferences and we're all, in our own little cliques. That's definitely true. I would say at Handyman Connection, we definitely manage and run and lead the system through collaboration and through committees. So to add what Susan said, we have a marketing committee. I love my franchisees on our marketing committee. We have an IT committee. Right now we have a craftsman committee that we get collaboration on how we should build our teams and our staff. And then we have an overall advisory council. So we manage and lead and grow together through those groups. But also, I would share this story. When I joined the brand I worked with prior to Handyman Connection, one of our franchisees on our advisory council, we were working on an overall strategic plan, and he just came forward and he said, man, you guys are working on something where, the ladder's just up on the wrong wall. Like, you should be doing this and not that. And at the time, it happened to be the advertising fund for this particular brand. And the leader of that particular brand, the president at the time, thought he had laid out a perfect strategic plan for the brand, and he just had to kind of stop and go, thank you, Mr. Franchisee, for saying that. And we just totally kind of moved the whole boat and went in a different direction. So most of the time in a brand, your franchisees know what's going on out there when they're, working with their customers or their staff. And so leading through collaboration is the way any of you, as emerging franchisors especially, need to manage and lead. And I strongly encourage you, if you haven't formed advisory councils or committees, definitely form them, even if they're 2-3 people, to ask them, what's the best thing in this particular discipline or that particular discipline, marketing, operations, franchise sales even. Get their feedback on what can be done better. And then the last thing I would say is definitely pilot new programs. And as Ryan said, don't necessarily go to the star franchisee or the franchisee that's, the squeaky wheel that you think, needs the oil because they're screaming the loudest. Definitely spread that love and bring those franchisees into the pilot programs, whether you give them additional, ad fund dollars or however you manage through your pilot programs, a conference, tuition to conference, if you will, for being part of your pilot programs. I think that has been very successful for us in spreading the love and bringing different franchisees into pilot programs to prove out different new systems or different new programs.
That's great. Susan, to your point on educating, I'll call out suppliers here because I'm one. I said this on a Zoom call, one of our 3,800 Zoom calls we did in the last year. And I'll call Scorpion and even myself out. Suppliers, especially in franchise land, we need to do a much better job of educating Zs and the Zors when we reach out, especially to the Zs. We get caught up a lot into selling that, and the bad vibes that they have from suppliers is they just call to ask me for money. That's what I hear from them for. And we do a bad job of it. Suppliers do a bad job of it. We need to really focus on, in my opinion, spending time to educate that Z on the why. They don't know the marketing acronyms. They don't know the SEO, PPC. They don't know. They just know I'm running a home service brand and I need you to give me more money. That's what they know. And why we should do a better job of that. So just a challenge to myself and the vendors and suppliers out there.
I have a question on that. Any supplier here, have you ever spent time in an actual franchise business? Raise your hand. Kudos to you. Because I will say for franchise brands that I've been a part of, if a supplier has said, I want to go spend time, riding along with the franchisee, if they do sales calls or whatever, depending on the brand. I used to work in a pizza restaurant. So if they said, hey, I want to go spend time, being a fly on the wall, in operations in that pizza restaurant. I think that helps for that franchisee to work with you as a supplier to say, hey, they understand my business. They want to come learn my business. So that's just another lesson learned for our suppliers out there.
It's great. Q&A, we're going to leave 10 to however long you want for a question. Go ahead. If you want the mic.
So my question, I am a supplier, and my question kind of piggybacks off of what you all were just mentioning of, getting your hands dirty, I guess, in the franchisees' world and understanding them before reaching out as a supplier. So my question is, what we do ultimately is used at the franchisee level. And so I'm curious, as a franchisor, would you feel comfortable with the supplier reaching out to the franchisees first to kind of get background and understand and kind of have done homework? Or does that look to you as going behind the franchisor's back?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Good. Okay.
From my view.
Okay.
Now, after that connection has been made, then certainly there's an introduction. But otherwise, what happens is we get hundreds of calls and from all over our franchisees, and this supplier, vendor, partner is called, and it's like, we're all over the board. So that's that C word, that control part that sometimes we like to have, and it's just to foster more effective communication.
And it's also helping with, they're trying to understand, well, we have a brand standard and we have programs and systems, and it just goes back to why are they in franchising? And so it would help if you establish that relationship first with the franchisor, understand the why, what the brand standards are, what the brand's strategies and goals are, and then certainly I think we would be more open to say, hey, these are probably the best franchisees to call. You can certainly then continue due diligence. We would let the franchisees know, and then it probably would foster a better, more long-term relationship for you.
And you got to realize too, like anybody that's been a franchisor, we may not admit this, but like a lot of your decisions are made around like not wanting to get an angry call from your franchisee, right? So like when you're looking at anything, you're thinking in the back of your mind, how am I going to roll this out to the system when people won't get angry? Because they will, right? Every single change you make, whether it's like changing credit card processors to something really, really big, will be met with like the same response as if you just kicked their dog or kidnapped their child. Like that's pretty much the scale of it. And so So you've got to understand that. Like for you, it's like, oh yeah, it's just really easy. We're just going to change your operating software. Like we just want to swap out all the point of sale systems. And it's like all that franchisor is thinking is like, so you're trying to ruin my life, basically. I don't care how much money this is going to make. But the other thing, and I would say this, because this goes for franchisors when you're dealing with the franchisees, it took me a minute to realize this, and because I'm a supplier too. But it's like our job, whether you're a franchisor talking to your franchisee or a supplier talking to a franchisor, a lot of times we take the approach of like, I want to get this person excited about, if it's you talking to your franchisee, I'm going to get them excited about Massage Heights, or I'm going to get them excited about, what's your company? What? Drive. Thrive, right? And that's the wrong approach. Like, it's got to be like, I'm going to get this person excited about their business. That's your job. So I want to talk to you about how awesome your business is, how successful your business is going to be. And guess what? Thrive might be a little bit of a part of that, but they don't care about Thrive. Nobody does, right? And so if you're trying to like push that, and they don't care about what's happening at the corporate headquarters, if you're a franchisor, it's like all they care about is what's happening in Arlington at my location. And so get them excited about their location. Everything I'm doing here at headquarters or at this supplier is all based on making you more money and making things more exciting at your location there in Arlington.
One other thing I'll quickly add, just a best practice for many of you that have franchisees that struggle with understanding digital, because it's evolving and sometimes it's hard to grasp all the details. Many franchisees want to be the expert, they can't. I've always encouraged them, if they're not that person, find somebody on their team. There's so many people on their teams that can absolutely understand it, make it easier for him or her. So a lot of franchisees, especially multiples, will have somebody designated to kind of handle their digital and marketing day to day.
Send you my TikTok link as well. It's good content, really good. Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
So what do you do different with your first 5 franchisees?
Early days. What were you doing in 5? Yeah.
So it's a really good question. I always say start with the true fans, right? So that's why it's a huge mistake if you started your business in Haymarket, Virginia, to be like, hey, our first franchise is going to be in Los Angeles, right? It's because there's probably not many true fans there. So I always say your first franchisee hopefully will be like a customer or a former employee or somebody that is a true fan of your brand. So that's going to be the first like big word of advice I would give. Second is it's like a first round draft pick as a GM, right? They'll say a GM is only judged on their first round picks. And so if your first 5 franchisees, if you pick the wrong person to do it, you might struggle to have some success. And trust me, I know how hard it is. You're so excited that somebody wants to buy it, then that you're going to let anybody cut a check and get in. It takes a lot of discipline to do that. But again, I'll go back to the very first thing I said. If you know who you're trying to sell to, it will be, you can't get blown about by every wind of doctrine that comes your way. Like, you got to know, this is my plan. This is who I'm trying to sell to. This is where I'm trying to sell. And this is how I'm going to do it. But again, start with your true fans.
I would just add to that, if you are small and you're at 5 and you're trying to get to 10 and then you're trying to get to 20, it gives you the opportunity to hone in on your story. So think about the storytelling that you're doing in that first 5 and work with those first 5 franchisees just to start building the assets to tell your story. So your print assets, your video assets, because that will really help you to propel your brand to the next level. Because we all want to tell the story and hone in on, again, that elevator pitch, right? You've all heard it. You're standing in a booth and you're telling your story to try to sell if you were just at the IFE or wherever, but you need to also project that story in all of your digital marketing that you're doing. Mm-hmm. So it gives you the opportunity in that first 5. Maybe you didn't get it perfectly in the first 5, how's the story going to look in the next 10 and the next 20? So think about that.
And hopefully it will include stories from the first 5.
Absolutely.
Right?
Let's hope.
Like,
Let's
so
hope
as
those
you
first
move
5
on-
can tell their story to the 50th and the 60th. 'Cause
They're your
that
best
would be a really
salespeople.
great story.
Yep. More questions? Great question. Sir.
How much of your personal touch, like, did you put into obviously the first few, then moving on to 10, 20? When do you sort of go out at 30,000 feet? You're not as in touch with the small businesses.
This is operations, but
Well, I can just, from my standpoint, I've been with 9 brands. So I've been with small brands, I've been with the biggest out there, and I've been with medium. But whenever it comes to, first of all, getting to know the franchisee, you're there at the very beginning. I mean, it's just relationship, no matter how big or small you are. The bigger you get, obviously, you have to scale. But from an operations standpoint, you typically have somebody that operationally is with that franchisee day to day. We call them their FBCs, franchise business consultants. Again, that's their first line of calling anybody within the organization, so they're not calling everybody. So again, I would say from a CEO, president level, you're right there with the franchisee from the beginning, and you're always available. Honestly, no matter how big you get, just there's different layers that sometimes the bigger you get, that, you've got FBCs, you've got VPs of ops, et cetera, but involvement should be there from the beginning. It shows you care. It shows you're there for the right reasons.
and it'll probably never go. Like, they're going to want FaceTime, right? So, I mean, literally, your franchisees are your boss. At whatever level you work at within a franchisor organization, the franchisee is your boss. And so it's hard to kind of to say I'm not going to be doing this. Like, you're always going to have some form of relationship and do that. I mean, obviously, as operational demands grow, you're not going to be able to do everything that you once did. And so I'm a really firm believer that founder should move into just that purely relationship role. Let other people do the other stuff, and it's your job to communicate with franchisees and make sure that they're cool.
We have 5 minutes. Come on.
So it's around local store marketing, and most franchise agreements require the franchisee to spend a certain percentage of their sales in the local store market. How do you audit, for lack of a better word, that the franchisee is spending that money? And then specifically around digital marketing, do you audit to know how much they're spending on digital marketing as well?
Great question.
Yeah, so I'll take that. So interesting, when I first joined this brand, we have it in the FDD that they need, franchisees need to spend a certain percentage of sales on local marketing and a certain percentage on contribute to our brand fund. And we had gone to our advisory council and said, it hadn't been enforced in terms of like auditing, to your point. And at that point in our growth, our franchisees had said, we don't think, carrot stick, we should not like put an enforcement down. So we've pretty much run it kind of on your honor, but we've monitored it, and our coaches, our operational coaches, would coach to that on an annual basis where we collect P&Ls and we look at that and say, okay, you're growing a certain percentage and we see that you've spent X percent. And we've continued on that for pretty much the last 8 or so years. And so we're evaluating that now to say, okay, we're struggling in this age of labor shortage. Where should the marketing and the labor be as a percentage of the marketing investment? But right now we have taken the advice of our advisory council, and that's kind of where we are in that decision. But we also manage we have all the data. We know where the franchisees are spending on the digital front, and on an annual basis we get their P&L to know where they are on the scale of percentage of sales advertising to their sales growth.
Can I just ask one follow-up question?
Yeah.
So fine. So the plan itself, who is actually looking and reviewing the plan to make sure the plan makes sense?
Yeah, that's our marketing team.
Marketing.
So that's myself and our director of local marketing. And mostly that's her responsibility. But again, our digital marketing partners are an extension of our team, so they have a role in that. But ultimately, it's our two-person marketing team that's responsible for that. And that's mostly our US locations because we have a master in Canada. So we have about 45 US locations that we focus in on that.
And I mean, a lot of brands will use that local marketing fund as like a get out of jail free card, right? Because it's like, oh, sorry, Marty, you're saying your business sucks, then show me proof that you've been spending 2% of your revenue on local marketing. And it literally, like I've heard attorneys say, it's like, it's a great tool to have if a franchisee is complaining about not being successful. And so I would say though, if you're gonna collect local marketing from people, you better be pretty dialed in about and have the reporting set up, because if Jordan sends me $2,000, he wants to see $2,000 that went right back into Cleveland, right? I mean, like into his area. So you better have a system in place that's ready to do that. And it's not a bad idea. And I see a lot more brands. You used to never see a brand collect a local marketing fund and distribute it. I see more brands doing it now. It's just you got to be pretty tight in how that's being spent and how you're going to let your franchisees know.
Yeah, the biggest opportunity I've seen out there in the franchise world is it's not what they're investing in, it's do they have a plan? And I honestly believe if we were able to crack the nut and every franchisee across the whole country had a plan, honestly, they would be spending their dollars more efficiently, it would be more targeted, and then there's the accountability. So again, focusing on educating, planning, and investing time with your marketing team to help your franchisees develop a plan is really, I think, where it starts.
Sorry, I'll add one last thing to that too, because franchisees will come up with some absurd ideas, right? And so they bought a franchise for a reason. And so if you're gonna go, like, you should have like, hey, this is 5 things you can spend money on in your local marketing. Like, here's an ad that you can run on your Facebook, or like you should decide the limited number of things they're going to spend money on in their local market. Because if not, I'm telling you, the ideas you'll hear, and everybody in here will laugh, there will be some unbelievable ideas that you're like, you're joking me, right? Like, no, they're not. They're serious. So you should figure that out for them.
Go ahead, my friend.
It's
Her name's Marci.
You're fine.
You have a team of 2 people with you. What kind of issues did you have going externally to complement that team to create the tools for the type of auditing system you're speaking of? Like the general, like several different companies before you found the right one. Because you see this auditing based on the marketing strategies. And I'm just wondering, like, what headaches did you have going externally to bring the people in and have that relationship with your marketing team?
Yeah, that's a great question, and we probably need like hours to talk about that, but I could share with you. So when I joined this company, I inherited some partners, and we had evaluated, are they the right fit for us? So over the years that I've been with this company, we've gone out and done formal RFPs, we've done informal, this person's introduced me to these partners, but in general, we've made the decision that we want to align with partners that align with our core values as a team and as a company. But I'm happy to share with anyone kind of the formal RFP process that we've established at Handyman Connection. I'm sure there's others here that have gone through similar kind of more formal RFPs. But ultimately, we currently have a team of external vendor partners that we love, and again, they align with our core values. And I would say to anyone in the room, especially emerging brands, as you decide to look for outside vendor partners, there's tremendously valuable expert partners that are here or that are associated with the IFA. Just make sure that they align with your values and that you ask for references. There's, again, lots of people here that can help you find fantastic expert partners for whatever your need may be, whether it's a marketing partner, an IT partner. But that's how we did it, because again, because we're such a small and mighty team, those partners are so important to us and important to our franchisees. So happy to have a chat with you in more detail about that.
That's great.
My pleasure.
1 to 2 more questions we have time for. Go ahead.
Just started franchising.
9 corporate stores just started franchising.
Yep. So all of my interests, all the franchisee interests are true fans, as you mentioned. So what are some of the red flags in terms of personality profiling I should look out for?
Oh.
That's a big one.
What kind of concept is it?
Ice cream.
Ice cream?
Me, I'm the profile.
Right. Who doesn't like ice cream?
I mean, look, that's a hard question because I don't know your personality or getting deep into your concept. And so I would honestly, cop out answer would just be follow your instinct. Here's the thing though. If that person's a pain in the ass when you're going through the sales process, times that by like 150,000, and that's what they'll be like after they give you 200 grand, right? And so a red flag would be anything that makes them difficult to deal with in the sales process at all. Lack of understanding, lack of respect for your time, anything like that, it is just like magnified. Don't be the person that says, I'm sure that'll be better once we're married, right?
And
like that's just, that's a nightmare
a couple
waiting
things,
to happen.
Sorry, Brian. A couple things you might want to consider. Just somebody who wants to be their own entrepreneur, not follow the model that you've created. So they're like, oh, I've got all these 500 ideas, or let me do it differently this way. Those are red flags. So you might want to consider that. And again, if depending on your profiling, if it's sales, you're looking for great salespeople. If somebody like literally provides you 500 pages of everything about your systems that aren't right and really get analytical, it may not be the right profile for you. So intuitively, those are things you kind of want to watch out for. But, outgoing, aggressive salespeople, fun people, adaptability are key traits that could help.
Like in the quag or something like that, I would always say social dominates comments. So you need the social factor higher than the comments. They can be pretty dominant, but you want the social to be higher than that. That's just an indication that they like.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
And I'd say you're at an advantage because ice cream isn't super operational heavy, right? So it's not like a cheesecake factory where people are going to have to cook like 50 pages worth of recipes. And so you really have the benefit of finding the right personality because you don't necessarily need that operational background. And so yeah, I would be pretty disciplined in how it doesn't. If you've waited to franchise so you already have 9 corporate stores, I'd say you're probably pretty disciplined. You're in a good spot.
One more.
Yeah.
Hey, I have a question kind of specifically about Facebook. Carissa Johnson, Moms on the Run, we have 50 units that have really grown organically. We're just at that part of, okay, let's actually try to spend money and grow. I've just been really concerned about the cost of Facebook ads in the last year or two, and I was curious if anyone else is experiencing this where results are way down, like it's just costing so much more per lead in the last couple of years. I'm curious kind of if that's affecting other people and if they're starting to diversify beyond Facebook. It's been it helped us so much that I think I'm hanging on to Facebook too much and not really willing to diversify and try other things. And I'm just curious about others' experience with Facebook and the cost and whether others are just trying to do it better and learn Facebook better and keep up with all the changes, or if other people are starting to diversify more.
What's your concept?
It's fitness for women. We do outdoor-based running and strength training classes for women.
And are you using Facebook to get people to come work out, or like to buy a membership, or to sell a franchise?
Both. I mean, we haven't really tried to sell franchises. Honestly, it's just been word of mouth and customers and coaches buying in. But that'll be our next step. But I'm kind of afraid to keep investing so much into Facebook.
I would say follow your instinct. You should definitely diversify your channels. I wouldn't put all my eggs in one basket, but you don't walk away from success. If you're experiencing success, definitely look at other channels to, put your budget in and test it. That would be my instinct, again, not knowing everything about your concept and your ideal target. And I would definitely try it for franchising, but I don't know, what your goals are. So that would be my short answer for you.
I'd say make sure you're looking at your audience and refine it. Because Facebook can be sweet. Like, I have run ads through Facebook where you target people that have that are in like a Ford group, and so you create an ad using a Ford F-150. So that somebody scrolling through, they're like, oh, that's my truck. What is this? Like, you can get super detailed. That's what's so cool about those channels. And so like target people that are into Lululemon and make an ad featuring a woman wearing Lululemon, right? And then you'll get more traction out of that versus kind of a blanket approach of like, oh, well, we're just going to target women in these age groups. Like you can get crazy specific, and you can find stock photography with everything in it.
I would also add, I came from a fitness concept, and again, it's knowing who your demo is, but Instagram and YouTube were great channels for fitness, my prior brand. Just obviously very visual and showing what you're doing. So just a suggestion there.
Yeah, and just one other thing I was going to say, I don't know, again, your target and your target age, but even Jordan mentioned it. I mean, TikTok is really getting a lot of traction, so I would just suggest looking at that. But again, just diversifying in general, and I think your instincts are spot on that you should definitely look at other channels.
Completely
But
agree.
not, again, abandon what's working right now.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Was today beneficial? Was that good today? In class? Good. Awesome.